Hello and welcome to our brand new show, African Voices, a show where we tend to discuss the achievement and also the issues that affect Africans in this country and abroad. But before I go forward, here is my colleague, Dr. Kululeku Sibanda, who is a political analyst and also a former lecturer at the University of Huddersfield. Hello, sir.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And before we go forward, like I said, we will be discussing who tonight? Donald Trump. Yes, of course, Mr. Trump, whose presidency has been marred by lots of controversies since he took over from President Barack Obama. I would like to introduce our guests today who are here to help us absorb what Mr. Trump has been accused of. Remember, it's an accusation. So, first of all, I would like to introduce Maxine Bowler, who is a long-term activist and also a member of Stand Up to Racism, and another title as well she is a member of the TUC executive community here in Sheffield. Hello, Maxine.
Hello.
And also, I would like to introduce the man himself, Mr. George Ben Anthony, forgive me, who is a mechanical engineer, production and manufacturing system engineer. And not only that, he's also a lecturer and a historian on African history. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Like I said earlier on, we'll be discussing today about Donald Trump. But before I ask Sibanda to explain what Mr. Trump has been accused of, I would like to give you first the update on what has been happening across the continent. Right. First of all, I'll start with Congo. In Congo, Pope Francis has warned the authorities in Congo to stop using extreme violence on its people. Why? That's because lots of people have been protesting against the presidency of Joseph Kabila, and the security forces didn't find that funny. Due to that, 6 people were killed, and now even the pundit in Italy has intervened, asking the authorities to be considerate. Moving on. In Libya, which has been in the headlines as well recently for all the negative reasons, 6 people or a group of people have been arrested, accused of abducting and torturing African migrants who come into the country using Libya as a transit to come to Europe. And as a result, those people have been arrested as they were asking for ransom from the victims' families. And finally, you and I will know, or most of us will know, in the past 2 months, Zimbabweans were dancing in the streets of Harare. For what? Jubilating for the fall of their long-term leader, Robert Mugabe. But guess what? Mr. Mugabe has been promised he will stay safe, he will live happily, and he will get a lucrative retirement package. That's it. Yes, a lucrative retirement package. i.e., he will get everything that he used to get, and nobody is going to prosecute him. As the saying goes, friends look after friends. But now it's time for our main discussion, which is about Donald Trump today. So, Sibanda, can you tell us what Mr. Trump has been accused of?
Well, Bella, the world has come a long way since the Second World War, hasn't it? We had the United Nations, and with all these institutions that supposedly were helping humanity on Earth drive towards living together in peace, and that will try and prevent wars and will stop hate and will improve our conditions on Earth. But what seems to be happening now with President Trump, at least, is that you have not just those institutions getting undermined, but you also have a situation where even the values that underpin those institutions getting undermined. So in the first month of the year, you have accusations here that President Trump, sitting in a meeting with senators from both the Republican and Democratic parties in the U.S., referred to people from what you would clearly see as African descent as, using these expletive words that I can't use here, and that he would have preferred people from countries like Norway to be allowed to come to the United States. So, and of course we know that since then he has made statements to the effect that he did not say exactly that, and that those who were there from his party have forgotten what he said. They can't remember very well what he said, whereas members of the Democratic Party are very clear about what he said. So be that as it may, it seems to me as though it is important for us to understand whether or not such things can be said. But before we look at what he said, Maxime, what do you think? Do you think that from what you've heard, from what you know about this matter, does it sound like what I've said is true, or have I put a terrible slant to it?
I think Donald Trump is turning the clock back, really. He's, I think he's a complete bigot. He's a racist. He's a misogynist. He's a climate denier. On every issue, he is turning the clock back. And I think he's whipping up racism and really playing to the alt-right, the Ku Klux Klan and all those people. So I think he's a very, very dangerous man, what he's doing. Every time he says something, people say he's stupid. I don't believe that's true. I think he's quite a clever man, but he is playing to the alt-right, and he's definitely, he's a denier about the history of America, really, isn't he? Because America, of all countries, is built on immigration, built by black slaves, built by people who came from many, many countries. Into Staten Island, in New York, they came from across the world. It's a country built on waves of immigration, and not to say that he hates all immigrants, builds walls, builds barriers, all those things to me are just completely wrong.
Brother George, what do you think? I mean, going to Maxine's point here, is Donald Trump also an immigrant? Is he also an immigrant? Is he not an immigrant? I mean, his stance.
Every Caucasian in the so-called America is an immigrant. Let's have that clear.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. When my children were little, right, this sort of time of day after school, they would watch TV, and I'd watch, they called the program Children's Hour.
Yeah.
There were two programs in particular, one titled Hawkeye, Last of the Mohicans. Then later another one called Ishi, Last of the Yaqui. Those are two nations, never mind blinking tribes, these were nations who occupied the land that is now called America, so-called. So where did they go? What the American occupiers have done is to annihilate those people and steal their land. That's what it amounts to. And we should know, as African people, they call us Africans. We're not, our ancestors didn't call themselves African. Neither did they call our beautiful motherland Africa. But we'll leave that for now. I'll just tell you one of the names for our motherland is Al-Kebu Lan. And we were taught that by one of the greatest historians we have and defenders, the late Dr. Ben Yochanan. People would know him as Dr. Ben. Just Google Dr. Ben and you'll get the rest of it. Yeah. So it's disturbing. It's disturbing because people tend to dismiss Trump. Say, oh, but that's what they did with and about Hitler. And people like my father were warning us at home because then it was colonialist rule by the British colonialists. And the elders used to sit in the evening and have their discussions, Yeah. And I remember my father, among a lot of the elders, saying that they should not dismiss Hitler as crazy or stupid, that he was dangerous. But look what happened. And I think people are tending to do this now with Trump. Yeah. In my opinion, he's a fool, first and foremost. That's the first thing. He's a fool because if he thinks he can get away with all these insults against us. Like, according to the text I got, they said they mentioned something about these countries, like, oh, he loads the Mexicans. I don't know why, because he said he was going to build a wall. Foolish fellow. He was going to build a wall between U.S. America and Mexico. I mean, for what reason?
I think, yeah.
Well, you might say it's a foolish reason, but to him, probably he's wanting to stop what he calls immigrant from coming in. But let's leave that.
He is an immigrant.
Well, in his own...
Is he not?
Yes.
Look, every Caucasian, a so-called white person living on that land, is an immigrant. I just told you about the two of the great nations that occupied that land. The Mohicans and the Yaqui. But you had the Blackfeet. Oh, I can go through.
Yeah, but that's history that we don't need to be going into right now.
Well, this is it.
What we're looking at is what he said about
Africans
and other countries.
Yes.
Describing Africa in a very derogatory manner. So you as an African, Mr. Trump has already, well, he didn't come outright saying, I did not say this word, you know, but he's made it clear that some of the words that were said is not what has been published. But you as an African, do you blame Mr. Trump for what has been said or for what has been reported?
Well, I've only listened to him one time. Well, I quote unquote listen. I don't like him. So whenever the news comes on and he comes in, I switch the station. So I don't know very much about all this stuff he's talked about. Mainly it's friends and colleagues who've been keeping me up to date with. I know they said something, the word that I just used about Africa and Mexico.
Okay.
He's going to build this wall between America and Mexico, or Mexico, as people say.
Okay.
Why?
I think that ties in with the point that Maxine raised earlier on, which is that maybe people take him to be stupid, and that people can be dismissive of him and say he probably doesn't know what he's doing, and whereas it would be that he knows what he's doing. Let's look at some of the things that he's said, because you could accuse him of being racist against people from Africa. You could do that if you look at this one statement. But he's done more than just that. He talked about building the wall to prevent the rapists from Mexico moving into America. He made references to...
And he'll get the Mexicans to pay for it.
But now they're not paying for it. And then he talked about Native American heritage, and he referred to the senator who claims to be of that heritage as Pocahontas. People will know this, and it's not a nice term. He's referred to Haitians in unfriendly terms. He wanted the death penalty and was pretty much acted as judge and jury in matter of the New York 5 black African Americans who are accused of, now exonerated by DNA evidence, but were accused of having killed a woman who was jogging. Now, when you look at all these things, and he accused President Obama of not being fully American, that he was born in Kenya, and that he didn't get into law school, Harvard Law School, out of merit. That he somehow got there because black people are being given these advantages. Now, what does this say about his? Does that prove part of the point you're making, that perhaps he's not stupid? He knows what he's doing. He divides people just for whatever reason.
He's playing to his supporters.
Yeah.
When the right winger drove into the Charlottesville crowd of protesters against the statues coming down, and Heather Heyer was killed, he immediately portrayed it as being two equal sides. He was playing to the Ku Klux Klan, to his audience, to those people. Actually, many people, I mean, if you look at the vote for Trump in America, you'll see that actually he got a smaller percentage than Clinton did. It's the peculiarities of the American system. Nevertheless, he took a big vote from people in the Rust Belts, which are the areas where there was big industrialization, and those industries have collapsed. And he's played to their discontent, hasn't he? And so he, instead of saying that, you know, there's a problem that we haven't built factories, that people haven't got jobs, that people are in trailers, actually, America is one of the most divided states in the world now, I think. What he's done, he said, the real problem is black people, or Muslims, or Latinos, or this is what he's done. This is the game. Actually, it goes on in this country as well, to be honest. It still goes on in this country. You know, the NHS is in crisis. What does the Daily Mail have on its front page? Tourism, NHS tourism is the problem. It's the same kind of argument that goes on. It's a right-wing argument that seeks to blame the victims, really, to blame black people, to say that they are the enemy. And when he talks about people coming across the border from Mexico, what does he say of those people? They're rapists and they're drug dealers. So it's not just that they're a problem in terms of coming in. He's creating this stereotype. I mean, I remember when they used to talk about in this country the black mugger. And they don't talk about it so much now, but this was a stereotype they created which justified the systematic stop and search of black people across this country. And that's exactly what he is doing in America. He's an extreme right-winger. Actually, he will do nothing for the ordinary people at all. It will not help them in any way. Those people are fooled by him. They're fooled into believing that somehow black people are the problem, whatever. I mean, I don't know if any of you saw the programme on telly last night with Miriam Margolyes. I don't know if you saw it. No. Miriam Margolyes is a Jewish woman who's been travelling across America, and it showed you this poster which said, diversity is a code word for white genocide. It's a massive, great big billboard in the south of America, and I thought, this is just shocking, really.
But talking of that, Maxine, do you think, like, for instance, Trump is a man who is saying things the way ordinary people or ordinary white people say it in the pub or any other place?
I think he's encouraging it. He's encouraging. I mean, there's more racist attacks than we've ever seen in America taking place now. I mean, the statistics will say that.
Okay.
There's more white supremacist organisations growing than there was before. He's encouraging the growth of those organisations, and, you know, he's making them feel they can be proud to come up.
Not a problem. I'll just try to stop you there for the meantime until we come back for the break.